And then having done that, we needed to find out what he heard. And here you see the first results. His pitch is along the vertical axis, the number of electrodes along the horizontal. And you will see how with different rates of stimulation, from 50 to 100 pulses per second, how his pitch increased. And then if we gave a rate of 200 pulses per second, it increased further, but only to 200 pulses per second. Speech goes right up to 4,000. So again, it confirmed our animal studies that we would not be able to give our patient speech understanding using single channel stimulation. We would have to use multi-channel stimulation like a piano keyboard. But there was hope, because as you see with the arrows show also that there was a pitch for place of stimulation which increased from low to high electrodes. The most interesting finding was that instead of hearing pitch, he heard timbre. Now, timbre is what you experience if a violin is playing the same note as a cello at the same intensity, but they sound different. And we found he heard timbre. And when I stimulate, I will stimulate now the low frequency area of the cochlea, and you will hear a dull sound. And I then stimulate a high frequency end, and you'll hear a sharp sound. Then Rod was subjected to further tests. Remember now, this was 1978, August, and I was running out of money. I knew that by December 1978, although we were making good progress, I would have no more money to do any more research. Here is Rod now on the 6th of October to 27th of November, getting very close to the end of the year. And here came one of the exciting possibilities. When we played Rod Saunders' different pitches, he also surprised us by hearing vowel sounds. And I will just play you from Rod's first test session, him hearing the vowel sounds.
It sounded like low and dull. That's a very high F.
So he heard vowels for dull sounds that were low and had a format that was low, and for high-pitched sounds they were different vowels. I will explain that now because it's hard to understand. When stimulating different areas of his inner ear, he experienced vowels, and for a lower frequency area, he got a vowel e. For higher frequencies, I and E, and for low frequencies, due to the electrode outside, he heard O, giving the vowel O. Now, at that stage, we did not know how to give him speech understanding, and that was the crucial clue that enabled us to develop the first coding strategy. Formants are concentrations of energy. They're resonances in the vocal tract. It's like a pipe organ. If you have a long pipe organ, you get a low frequency. If you have a short one, you get a high frequency, and the same applies to the structures in the mouth. So it was getting close to December, and we came up with the first speech processing coding strategy ever that was successful in helping him understand speech. The second formant, a very important energy concentration, we coded as place, and as I said, it was perceived as timbre. The sound pressure level was converted to current level and perceived as loudness. And his voicing frequency, that tells you the difference between saying B and P, was coded as pulse rate. Now this is what Rod's first strategy may have sounded like. It is an English nursery rhyme. It may be something that is common to Spanish, but I'll play what it might have sounded like to Rod and see if you can understand what he must have heard. Is Mary, Mary had a little lamb, a Spanish nursery rhyme. I'll play it again. It's Mary, Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow.
Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow.
Is that clearer? If you understand what it is, it's clearer. And that was the first. And from there we built on and made it easier to get the speech understanding. But remember, it wasn't perfect sound at that stage. And we're still working on giving perfect sound. So, it's now nearly Christmas time, 1978, and I was getting desperate to explain to the funding authorities that we were making progress. I asked my audiologist to do a very hard test on Rod. We call it open set speech understanding. He didn't know what the words were. And these are just a sample of a few words, and Angela presented him these words.
Ship, rug, fan, cheek, haze.
Now they're hard words if you don't know what they mean, but Rod got some of them right, just using electrical stimulation alone. And I knew then that we had succeeded in doing what 99% of the scientists said was impossible, and I was so overcome with joy, I simply quietly went into the next door laboratory and burst into tears of joy.
Ship.
But the good news was on the way. I had applied to the Australian government to develop it industrially, and on the 1st of February 1979, the government announced that it would fund the commercial development of this device on a trial basis to see if it was effective and if it could be commercialized, and subsequently Telectronics and then Cochlear was selected to do the industrial development that is much better done by an industrial firm than homespun work at a university. And then we carried out further studies to see if it would work, and it did. The next question was, people asked, had we produced a coding strategy that would work for just one person's brain? You know, was it something special? Would it apply to other people? And the other question was, would the four-man strategy that I just mentioned apply to all people? Would it apply to Spanish people, to Polish people? Would it apply even to tonal languages like Mandarin? So I operated on my second patient, Rod Saunders, in 1979, and here you see his audiologist, Lois Martin, presenting George this time with some speech read from the newspaper at his second test session, and George had been deaf for 17 years.
This is George, who is listening today for the second time ever to the speech processor. He had the operation just last month, and George has been deaf for 17 years and he hasn't heard a sound in all that time. Victorian resident medical officers will strike from Sunday.
Will strike on Sunday
unless the Victorian Hospitals Association,
the Victorian Hospital Association,
withdraws a plan to cut doctors' wages.
Withdraws a plan to cut doctors' wages.
So nothing has changed in all those years. But you can see he did have a real understanding using electrical stimulation alone. So we then needed to prove to people that it wasn't just us and it wasn't just personal bias. So we carried out a series of objective tests to see that it was as we thought. And here you see those first objective tests. The sentence scores are on the vertical axis. Patient 1, Rod, is in green. Patient 2, George, is in blue. The scores on the left are combined with lip reading, and you can see how much benefit it is compared to lip reading alone. And we were delighted too that he could understand some speech using electrical stimulation alone, leaving us room for improvement, but opening up the possibility that we could get better and hopefully one day real live accurate speech understanding. That wasn't the end of the story. We had to prove to industry that this was something that could be developed commercially and used for people around the world. Two of our engineers, Peter Seligman in one case, developed a big computer-based speech processor down to a small binocular-sized device that he could use in his daily life. This is the first session we had with Rod using his binocular case speech processor. We rushed down to Lois's kitchen to test it out.
What time are we going shopping?
What time are we going shopping? Oh, when I do my work. You can help me do my work and I'll get done quicker.
No, we don't do any more work.
We'll get done quicker if you help me.
No, I'm not going to help you.
You're not?
I'm ready to paper.
Oh, you can have a rest then. You work hard every day, you tell me.
I do.
Do you?
I've driven 1,200 miles in about 6 weeks.
What, just going in and out to the hospital?
That's right.
Oh, well, that's very good.
So we were able.
What time are we going shopping?
What time?
We were able to show then that it would work and it could be developed industrially, and we were very fortunate in Australia to have a partnership with firstly Telectronics, which became Coclear, who were pioneers in sealing devices that were placed inside the body, and they did a fantastic job. And the CEO, Paul Traynor, set up a tiger team with Jim Patrick and David Money and Peter Crosby, and in just 2 years or less they took the university research and made it into a device that could be tested out internationally for the US Food and Drug Administration. And this is the first cochlear device. It had a headband because we hadn't been sure how to fix it in place. And as a result of an international trial, both in the United States, Germany, and Australia, we were able to show that in 40 patients it produced benefits compared to lip reading alone, and for a smaller subset of patients you can see scores on the vertical and 3 months and 12 months scores, and it's starting. Even our first speech processing coding scheme was giving people useful hearing so that they could even have conversations on the telephone. Now, since that time, over the last 15 years, we've made further improvements in the speech processing, putting more and more frequencies into the strategy, and there you see vertical axis scores, word sentences, words in scores in red, sentences in blue, and we've got a score that is very good, but it's not perfect, and it's plateauing out, and it means that we have to do more research to try to aim for near normal hearing. The other challenge the challenge that was closest to my heart was, could children born deaf develop the right brain connections to understand speech? And so when the results were coming in positively on adults, I operated on the first children to have the implant. And here you see the new speech system developed by Coclear. In this case, it had magnets on the implant, magnets on the coil that sends information through the skin, and a speech processor. Children have found this an added help, because not only can they hear well, but some of them can put pins and stick pins on the magnet, which their other classmates can't do. These were the first children operated on at the University of Melbourne in 1985 and 86. And after many studies, it was shown by the US Food and Drug Administration in 1985 to be the first cochlear implant of any sort to be approved as safe and effective for children. And subsequent studies have shown that if we operate on children at a younger age, if we can operate on children under 2 and even under 12 months, they will develop normal or near normal spoken language. In this graph, you see equivalent language on the vertical axis, the years post-implantation along the horizontal, and you can see the results for those children from 12 to 24 months of age. But if we operate under 12 months, the blue tells us that we are getting age equivalent results with the cochlear implant compared to normal hearing children. I would like to